Hello, everybody. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. Today is Wednesday, October 9th, and it's just a little bit after 12:30. And as always, Automation Unplugged is brought to you by One Firefly, my day job. And very exciting news in that Automation Unplugged is now available as a podcast. So if you have not already, go check it out on all of your normal places where you would download your podcasts. We actually just submitted it today to iTunes, so it'll be available on podcast downloads on your iOS device in the next few days. But Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those places. The first show to go live is episode 87. That was my interview with Justin Johnson. So definitely check that out. Although I've been doing this show for a couple of years now, our editing video and we're going to actually riff a little bit with Matt, my guest here, in just a minute. But all the editing of video and all that, or not video, but editing of the audio and learning how to do that was going down a new frontier for my team and I, and that was a lot of fun. But certainly sign up to follow Automation Unplugged, the podcast. And what we're going to do is get into a cadence after every show of pushing that out as a podcast so that you guys can listen to that in the case or the off chance that you can't watch the show. So, and if you listen to it, don't be shy. Shoot me a Facebook Messenger or a text or an email and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think we should do more of or less of, and definitely open to that feedback. So anyway, we are jumping in right now. I believe this is episode 89, and the one and only Matt Scott of Omega Audio Video. And let's go ahead and bring him into the chat, and let's get going.
All right.
Matt, how are you,
Ron.
sir?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I am good. And now that, of course, as you just heard, we've launched the podcast. Now I'm very tuned into the quality of one's audio. And when you and I were talking offline, I was like, Matt, your microphone sounds so good.
Yeah, and that's the good people at Shure. They make us sound really, really good.
And how long have you been using that microphone?
This one I've had for, I want to say, about 8 months now. Actually, no. Yeah, probably 10 months. Got it at the end of last year, again, from the good people at Shure. And it's, audio is one of those things that, yes, this is a video podcast, and it's a lot of fun to be able to see each other and know what's going on and get facial expressions. But at the end of the day, if we can't hear us, it's not that great. The audio really, really helps, and I love my Shure mics. I'm a diehard Shure guy, though.
There are folks that are listening, and they're like, all right, great. Now you got to tell me the model number. So what's the model number of this microphone that you're recording with?
This lovely one is a SM7B. It is their one of their broadcast mics designed for, again, radio, podcasting. There's a lot of people that even use this in the studio for vocals. It's a fantastic cardioid dynamic mic. It's a wonderful product.
Oh, that's great. Now, Matt, what I'm going to do here, because I did not do it prior, I'm just going to check over on Facebook, make sure our live feed is going. It looks like we are live, and we've already had Chris Gamble coming to us from the UK, and he commented that audio is king. Podcast is the most convenient way to consume content. I hear you, Chris. I couldn't agree more. I actually consume, as my team will attest, I'm an avid listener of content, both from the industry and Matt's show and outside of the industry, just history and science podcasts. I eat that content up. So I hear you, and I know that it was a long time coming. There you go. We got Mario. He just stopped by. He said, "Live it is." Yes, sir, Mario. Good to see you, sir.
Another good Canadian.
Another good Canadian. And there you go. Chris just jumped in. He says, "Nerd talk." Yeah, that's what we do on this show. This is all about nerd talk.
Why wouldn't it though? Why wouldn't
it?
It's not as much fun if we just say, yeah, audio's great and we like our audio. You have to be able to talk about what it is and what makes it work. That's the industry we're in. Come on.
This is an industry of nerds, and we're proud of it. So, all right. And for those that are watching, and we have a nice growing audience now, you'll notice that I am a little pixelated. And I see Matt already commented. Look at him. He's on the ball on the show and commenting on the feed.
That's how we roll.
I'm going to throw that up there. I think it's the first time I've had a guest that knew how to be on the show and to comment under their own name live. That was pretty cool.
Some people might call it amazing. I call it slightly dyslexic and a little bit of ADD.
But it's okay. It's okay. Well, what I was going to let everyone know is I've been going through live my saga of moving, and I'm now in the new house. But funny enough, I don't have internet per se. My connection, my fiber to the house isn't here, so I'm coming to you from an AT&T hotspot, and so I am a little pixelated, and so for that I apologize. But it's the voice that matters anyway in the conversation. So. Matt, for those that are not aware of who you are, I know you are an active member of our industry. You're active with CEDIA on the board, and you're a dynamic personality hosting your own shows. But can you run our audience through kind of a little bit of your background, where you come from? Yeah,
for sure. First of all, again, thanks for having me on. We've been friends for a while, and I always enjoy chatting with you a little bit. For those who don't know me, I've been in this business really since I was a kid. I started doing live sound at probably 8 or 9 years old in our local church, and kind of developed that through. Got into a point in coming out of high school where I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and decided I would try to make some money playing in that church audio world, and subsequently was able to do that. So I started my company back in 2001, fresh out of high school, and ran that essentially up until now, where I'm still heavily involved in that. Our company has evolved over the years. We started in really dedicated to that House of Worship channel, and did everything from live sound design, staging, lighting, stage lighting for video, up to broadcast in the mid 2000s, where so many churches were having to transition from SD video to HD. Anybody who hasn't been in the industry for 20, 30 years won't really realize what that was, but that was a really big deal. And we did a lot of work in that channel, helping churches make that transition, because back then you couldn't just go on to bnh.com or any of the other places and find that you actually had to work with an integrator to do it. When the recession hit, we kind of shifted a little bit and got into residential, which is where we live a lot of the time now. And through that transition, we also discovered the world of corporate AV, which I really didn't even realize that existed. And in probably 2010, give or take, got exposed to the Infocom and now Avixa side of things. And today, our company does work in really all three verticals. We work residential, we work corporate, and we still do, and primarily myself, I still do a ton of consulting in the House of Worship market. And that's pretty much our business and my life in a nutshell. 2 years ago, I got nominated for the board of CEDIA and was somehow elected to that, which has been fantastic, and actually running right now again for the board. So if you haven't voted, please go ahead and vote for me, vote for Mel, vote for Amanda, vote for anybody really, but get out and vote. Not to turn this into hey, go vote thing. But
hey, we're here. We have an audience. Why not?
Exactly.
Why not do some lobbying, public lobbying?
Really
I would think less of you if you didn't ask me
I
to
know.
vote. How's
I
that?
know. And to be honest, as much as I'd like you to vote for me, at the very least, I'd like you to get involved, because that's one of those things that, whether it's in your local politics, your industry politics, any sort of thing along those veins, it shocks me how many people are really, really vocal about what the industry does, yet they don't get involved. They can't even get involved to the point of going in and voting. It's kind of a shame. So at the very least, I encourage you to get out and look at who's being nominated. And then please vote for me.
Take a look at that. That's funny. So a couple of things there I want to unpack, if you will. One is we were talking about CEDIA, so let's stay on CEDIA for a moment. So you ran and were elected for the last 2 years. You were serving on the CEDIA board.
Yep.
What was that experience like? What were you trying to accomplish, and what have you perhaps experienced or maybe even learned from that experience?
So there's a couple answers to that question. There's a couple places we can go with that. Going in, I really didn't know what to expect, and as much as it was told to me what I would, be doing and what that would look like and what that time commitment would look like. It was a little different once you actually got on. CEDIA is a great association, a great group of people, and has some fantastic volunteers and some fantastic staff. But there's a ton of work behind the scenes that goes on that the average member, especially the member who just pays their dues yearly and puts a plaque on their shirt or on their trucks or in their office, really has no idea how much is going on. And I think that was my biggest, initial takeaway was, my gosh, they are doing so much, and so much of it is stuff that is really important, but you don't think about how it affects your business on the daily. A great example of that is specifically in the US, but they also do it in Canada, and they also do it in the UK and across Europe. There's a whole department that takes after government affairs, which sounds really boring and really dry and terrible podcast content. But there's bills that are being brought before legislative bodies that make it impossible to do what we do. And groups like CEDIA, groups like Avixa, groups like all of these industries, including electrical unions, they're all out there pushing for their chunk of the pie. And without an association like CEDIA and the work that Darren and his team are doing in Texas, as of like 2 months ago, it would have been illegal for an integrator to pull a network cable if CEDIA hadn't gone out there and fought that. It would have fallen under the Electrical Association requirements, and you would have had to be an electrician to get out and do that. And Ron, it's not like we ever use network cable in our industry. It's not like we ever pull that.
You can just start moving on without it. I'm sure things will be fine.
Yeah, no big deal. So there's stuff like that again doesn't get talked about a lot that is really, really important. Stuff like education, stuff like the I'm going to forget the name of the program, but the new program that they just launched in the state of Indiana for people.
Where they're doing the training for
the workplace
apprenticeship training. Yeah.
Yes.
Workforce development.
Where it's a state mandated and state funded program to have people that aren't necessarily going to go to college can come take this as a accredited, trade school certification, and then go get a job within the industry. And I recorded a podcast with CEDIA about, stuff that I wanted to share as an elected or a nominated board member. And that was one of the big things was, in my company, we have a terrible time finding staff, finding people who can come in with no knowledge, some knowledge, tons of knowledge. It doesn't matter where they fall on that spectrum. It's really hard to find people. All the contractors I deal with, all the home builders I deal with, they're in the same boat. The workforce shortage is a really, really big deal. And no, is it something that in Omega we see every day as, ooh, this is a great benefit from CEDIA? No, it's not. But it's starting that ball rolling and getting that going so that our industry still has personnel in 10 or 15 or 20 years, that we still have jobs that we can do in 10, 30 years. It's about developing the industry.
Robert Keeler from CEDIA is watching and listening and commenting. Thank you, Robert.
That guy, we love
that
Robert.
guy, and we love Robert.
CSIT, yes, Robert, that's correct. Thank you, Robert.
He says, you lose the right to complain if you aren't willing to participate. That is so true. And then the name of that group in Indiana is Indiana, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's CSIT. And then he commented actually with a link. So if you're listening, go to the Facebook page and you'll see in the comments section a post on the integration technician training program, and it looks like there is an event or a training that Robert Keeler from CEDIA has posted. So definitely take a look at that. So that is cool. So your goal is to stay on the board and to keep doing what you're doing. You're enjoying that.
I am.
Time.
It's a lot of work. It's arguably maybe a little undersold as how much work is involved and how many hours are required for that. But that's not unlike any other volunteer position I've ever been involved with. There's always tons of work that can be done, and if you get passionate about it, you'll always find more work to do. How
do you find the time, Matt? If I'm gonna go down the business, you're running a business, or do you have a GM, or do you have someone running Omega?
No,
I still run it. Are you also running the company and doing this volunteer work?
I really should hire a GM. That's a great idea.
There you go. No, it's full of ideas.
You are. No, I still run Omega every day. I had a client meeting right before this. I still get on the tools. Depending on the day and depending on the week and depending on the project. The time is the hard one. And to be honest, I probably don't have a good answer for you other than to say a really stereotypical thing of, if you need something done, ask a busy person to do it. You will find time to make that happen. Now, my wife doesn't always agree with that, but such is life.
Volunteerism is hard. I mean, at different stints in my life, I've volunteered for different organizations, both within the industry and without. And there's no such thing as you had the time and thus you found a way to spend the time.
No.
Whenever you do that, you make the time. You make your schedule based on your priorities and how you define them.
You do. And to me, it's always, you will find time for things you're passionate about. So like up here, I know everyone will be shocked, but hockey's a big deal up here. And we have we have a local OHL hockey team, and there are people that go to every single game, and they will find ways to do that. They will change their schedules to go to those games because they are passionate about the London Knights. You will find time to play golf if you love golf. You will find time to do whatever it is that you do. And for me, one, I'm a terrible quitter. So once I get into something, I have a hard time not being involved in it. But two, I really like this industry. I really like what we have as a community, and anything I can do to help further that is gravy to me. It's something that I love doing. I love helping propel the industry forward, if I can be so bold. I love covering the industry. One of the things that I helped start with some friends of mine a couple of years ago was aviation, and I get asked all the time, how do you find time to do a weekly show, let alone go to 3 or 4 trade shows a year, spend most of the show covering the show from a press standpoint, not from Omega. And again, it's one of those things where this has become a passion project for me. This is something that I absolutely love doing. I love being able to, in the terms of aviation, I love sitting down and talking to people like you, and having conversations on our show about the industry and the news of the day and stuff that's going on. I love going to trade shows and meeting people and talking to manufacturers and getting into the nitty gritty of what they're showing and what they're doing and how they're trying to propel their company and the industry collectively forward as well. It's just something that, again, once you find that you're passionate about something, it's not that hard to dedicate time to it. Does it make family time sometimes a little complicated? Yeah. But it would be the same thing if I played baseball 3 nights a week or played golf 4 times a week. Is it tough to manage that and a business? Yeah. But at the same time, the other option is I put my head in the sand and just work and focus on my business, which is great. And I'm not putting that down at all. And my accountants probably tell me more often than I should that that's what I should be doing.
Right.
But that doesn't help us collectively. It doesn't do anything to raise the profile of the industry and help my clients get to a point where they don't just see us as the audio guys.
Right.
Now,
if you'll allow,
yeah.
In terms of balancing, your show AV Nation
Mm-hmm.
or your show on AV Nation, which, by the way, thank you for inviting me on multiple occasions.
Of course.
It's always fun to be on that show. And the considerable investment of time you put into CEDIA, you do have this business, and a lot of the folks that are either watching and listening, by the way, Chris Gamble just said Resi Week rocks.
Thank you,
there
Chris.
You go, getting a shout out for your show. Your integration business, which you've been running for almost 20 years now, balances residential work and commercial work.
Mm-hmm.
And what are typical residential projects that you do, and what are typical, just for the audience, just so they understand, different integrators are not all the same, and they're not all approaching projects the same way. There's a lot of unique approaches. So what are typical projects for you, just for everyone's kind of baseline?
We kind of hit in residential, we hit a bit of a wide gamut. We do everything from, if somebody needs us to hang and bang a TV, for the right client at the right time, we will take care of that. But a typical project for us is a somewhat custom solution in some form of scale. What I mean by that is we don't do a lot of cookie cutter stuff. We don't do anything in the track home world or production build. That is not us. We are the company that you call if you want something somewhat unique, or you need a discrete, creative solution to your problem. And again, that can be something as simple as a good size mid-market, upper market home that wants a simple distributed video system, centralized, etc., or something where you've got, again, that mid to upper market home and you want a full custom solution top to bottom. That's kind of where we live. In that world, we do a ton of work with lighting control, lots of shading. That whole world is pretty big for us. From a commercial standpoint, it's evolved a lot the last couple of years. When we first started out, it was a ton of SMB work. Small.
What is SMB?
Sorry,
small business?
Yeah, small business. A lot of mom and pop operations, corporate in the sense of office spaces, professional facilities, stuff like that. We even did a fair amount of work in quick serve restaurants, where we're doing audio, we're doing some video boards, we're doing menu boards, stuff like that. And that still is a decent aspect of what we do. And
digital signage type applications?
Yeah, a little bit of digital signage. And we still play in that space, but we've kind of watched some shifts, and we had I don't know how to phrase it properly, but we had a kind of like a watershed project a couple of years ago, where a large digital tech company in town here was they built a new building, renovated a building into essentially a brand new building, 30,000 square feet per floor, 3 floors. And we came in and did video in all the conference rooms, audio throughout the whole facility, with multiple zoning and, wireless streaming to all of those, because they're a creative company. We did just a plethora of stuff, and we handled top to bottom their network. We had done networks in the past. I've had a long relationship with Cisco. That was not outside the norm, but it was on that scale. We're talking something like 400 endpoints per floor, like just a massive network. And for the first time, we handled that completely in-house. And that was one of those projects that we did, and all of a sudden it popped up in my head of, we're coming in and so often, especially in the light commercial or the mid commercial, you're coming in and you're fighting as the AV company, the network engineers, the IT people. But in those smaller businesses, a lot of times they don't have on-site, on-staff IT. They outsource. So rather than us coming in and fighting with whoever that outsource is, why can't we come in and offer a complete solution, a complete package? Here you go. We will manage your networks. We will install and deploy your networks. We will manage firewalls, the whole stinking kit, as well as do your AV. So if you need AV in your boardroom, yeah, it's going to work because we know what the network's doing. There's not some other peripheral company that's coming in and changing things without telling the lowly AV guys. And that was a big shift for us, and a big shift for us on our corporate commercial side, where now almost 50% of our corporate commercial work is actually IT. It's wow. Focused on IT and focused to the point of we're doing some work with like Sophos now too, to where we're doing endpoint security as well as supplying HP machines throughout the offices. We're doing we're not flirting with IT. We're actually an IT company now.
It sounds like you're an IT company.
We're an IT company now. And
have you had to add structure or people to provide the after install service? Yes. Because if a business's network goes down or has a blip, I mean, that's a very significant matter.
It is. And that's the big pain point of going down that road, is as soon as you start flirting with true IT, if Ron, at your house, when your internet goes down, like it did today, you get by. Unless you're a really needy client who demands that, right, we roll a truck to fix that at 2 a.m. in the morning. When you're a corporate client, one, you have the ability to build in a lot more redundancy and they're willing to pay for it. But two, you have to be significantly more flexible and significantly more on call. So yeah, we've had to change our processes a little bit. We've had to adjust the manner in which we manage that to ensure that we can be on site. And I think the biggest thing that we've had to do is connect that properly to our clients, to explain that properly, that because we now have this added side, there will be days where all of a sudden we're not coming to your job site because we have to go and manage this. And it's a bit of a culture thing internally. It's also a situation where we rely on some third parties as well to make that happen. We have we internally have a network engineer, but we also have 3 network engineers that we work with remotely. And we can call them up and say, hey, I need this solved in the next 2 hours, and send it an email. And one of those guys will get back to us and say, yep, we're on it. Send them the credentials and they go and they make it happen. And there are ways that if you scale things appropriately, you can manage that. But yeah, it's definitely something you have to pay attention to.
Chris just asked a question. He said Omega sounds like a big company. What is your staff count?
We are not a big company, which is the creative thing. As far as true staff, we're 5. Then we have a nice little library of third parties that we work with on certain things. And that sounds like a really easy way to manage growth and manage some of those things. And it is and it's not. I still have clients who will not let anyone but me on their job site. They will not let my guys show up if I'm not there, or they absolutely have me show up. One of the stories I've told for years is that I have one client, and she literally pays me. She doesn't pay me personally, but she pays for me to personally show up and change light bulbs for her, because we have this weird trust relationship where she does not want other people in her house, and she's willing to pay me my going rate for a site visit to change light bulbs. And I've told that story for a couple of years. It's something that still happens. But what really, really cracks me up is that I've talked to her about it and said, we're to the size where, and we're busy enough, I don't need to change the light bulbs. Yes, but I trust you. Okay. And that solves the problem. And for us, that's kind of how we approach everything that we do, is if we can get to the point of trust where we have that trust with the client, then we can have that conversation with them that we're going to manage your firewall. You don't need an outside IT firm to complicate your life. We'll give you one call. Make the one call. We'll solve it.
I want to pose, Sean Sturmer posted a comment when you were referencing that you do residential and commercial. He said, that's where I see a lot of my dealers shifting focus. Spot on. And Sean, you can clarify that if I misquoted your statement there. And then Chris made the comment. He says, you provide a lot of services. If you had to just be one. Now, Chris, I'm going to challenge. I don't know why he has to pick. But he says, if you had to be just one, are you commercial, resi, or house of worship? What's your focus? I don't know how you want to answer that, but that was the question from Chris.
So I'll answer it this way. We do. It can complicate my life a lot. It makes, if all you do is cinema rooms, not to say that cinema rooms are easy and simple to do, but that's a really small, finite focus. The aspect of what we do and the solutions that we provide means that, especially myself, I've got to stay up on everything. But it's also a factor of just how I live my life. That's what I do. I try to consume as much information as possible. To Chris's question, it's not the vertical that I choose. It has nothing to do with the vertical for me personally. What I would choose are the projects that allow me to be creative. And that is the hardest thing in any one of those verticals for me, is if we're going and looking at a project and there's literally no creativity required, right? You can walk in and go, yep, we're going to put speakers here, we're going to put the TV there, we're going to put this there. I find those projects a little boring. In the biggest thing that I absolutely love and continue to love about House of Worship is, as soon as we got beyond just, hey, here's your mixer, here's your console, here's your wireless mics, here's where the speakers are going, and we got into the broadcast side of, we're going to help you design your stage for the effect and the lighting and everything together to create that product, that end product. And if you're a House of Worship person, please don't misunderstand what I mean by product. But when we're going to create that picture that somebody sees on TV or on a broadcast, the creativeness that I get to do going into that is what I loved about that industry. When we just completed a fairly large project on the river here, and it's on like 1.5 acres. It overlooks the river. It's a beautiful property, kind of out in the country. But the master bedroom had a wall of windows. We had no place to put a TV. And we also couldn't steal enough of the budget to get a full-on, motion mount that would come out and do all this stuff. They just wouldn't spend that. So we were able to create and custom engineer and build this whole sliding contraption thing to get the TV in the right spot and have it come all the way back and hide away properly. There might be a case study on that with Peerless at some point in the near future. That's the kind of stuff that I absolutely love. I love when we can get into anything that sparks creativity. We had a project a little bit earlier this year as well, where we didn't spec a single piece of AV, we spec light fixtures. And I was able to work with the client and create this really cool lighting design where we painted the house with light and put a bunch of Lutron controls on it and a bunch of trim spotlights and a bunch of other fixtures. I loved doing that. For me, it's all about where the creativity lies. If we can do that in any one of those industries, it's great. From a business side, and I'm sure this is an overly long answer to Chris's fairly finite question. From a business side, I like the jobs that make us the most money. Those are the jobs I like, and that's the vertical I'm in. Because at the end of the day, I'm a businessman. My job is to continue to keep my people employed, keep my family fed, and hopefully have work coming in tomorrow.
Are you torn? Are you torn, Matt, between those? Do you find those drivers as opposing in terms of if you're driven as a business operator to sign the best clients and the most profitable projects?
Yeah.
Is that antithetical to finding then the projects that are the most the best creative outlets for you?
Yeah.
Are you able to align them often, or does sometimes just one or the other win?
I'd say yes. I'd say we get to align them more often than we don't. Usually what happens is the non-creative projects, the projects that are real standard, repeatable, kind of boring, everyday work, there's usually not a ton of budget there. When you get into projects where you have to create something, or you're having a much bigger conversation about how that space is going to feel, as a rule, the budget's there. There's additional things that come in, and they can be very creative. But especially with the house of worship side, there's a lot of time that it's not. We're being creative because we're trying to stretch $1 into 10 or 25, depending on where you are.
Sure.
So yeah, but it's a balance of, I can be really happy doing a ton of repeatable, easy work that makes us a lot of money. But if I find it really, really boring, like I didn't start a business to not enjoy what I do, right?
Sure.
Yes, there's monetary rewards. There's all this other stuff that goes into running a business and why I started a company. But at the end of the day, I do want to enjoy what I'm doing. I do want to enjoy the interactions with people. And, you hear all the stories about clients that dealers don't want to talk to. Don't want the clients are just ridiculous. And my response has always been, well, why did you hire them? Did you not interview them? No, they interviewed us. I interview all of my clients. It is just as important that I enjoy working with them, that they enjoy working with us. And again, could we do that? We've turned down a lot of work. We've gotten off a lot of projects that are fiscally very effective, but either they're boring, they're not creative, there's nothing there that's enjoyable, or the client is just a nightmare to deal with. And I personally don't subscribe to the point that we have to do that kind of work. And as long as I can keep my people fed and keep my family fed, then yeah, it's a balance, but I'm not going to go down that road personally, unless we're absolutely forced to.
I want to, well, first of all, believe it or not, we've been going almost 45 minutes.
I talk a lot.
No, it's awesome content. So I love it. But I am mindful of our audience, and their lunch break is probably coming to an end here if they're watching us during lunch. You have been a member of the CEDIA board for the last 2 years. You've been exposed to a lot of official, I'm making it sound fancy, but official processes and methods of how to run Robert's rules and meetings and outside consultants and all of this really intelligent, exposure that you've had to maybe designing the future of the trade organization and such. What of that experience have you been able to cross over to your own business? In other words, from your being on the board, what have you been able to learn that has applied to your day-to-day business? And if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
So, one, I've been lucky enough to serve on a couple other boards in the past. So it hasn't been new to me as far as Robert's rules and a lot of that fun stuff. I think the biggest takeaway that I would say I've gotten from my relationship with C in this case has been, you get a 30-foot view, right? When I'm working every day in Omega and looking at things, everything is finite and right in front of me. And how we approach this job, how we deal with this is just how we do it. And there's not a lot of external things that influence that. In being on the board, the exposure and the understanding of how the industry as a whole works is really, really important. And it's something that has helped. I don't know if it's really directly impacted what we do on a day-to-day, but it's something where it helps us recognize what's going on and see the bigger picture. And I think that's a trend that I think is overlooked a lot. It's really easy to get head down in your own business and not pay attention to anything externally. I've had conversations with both people at CEDIA, with and I don't necessarily mean CEDIA corporate, but within the channel, with people in the Avixa channel and stuff like that. And I've been fairly heavily involved in both of those channels for almost the last 10 years. When we are head down in our own businesses, life is really simple. It really is at the end of the day. It's making sure you've got enough coming in, enough going out, you're picking the right products, you're finding the right solutions. When we start to look beyond that and start looking at the industry, start looking at external influences to our industry, that's where it gets a lot more interesting. And kind of what I mean by that is there was we'll probably talk about it on Resi Week on Monday. There was an article that just came out on The Verge from the head of Logitech. And he came out and he said that he does not know where their Harmony business will be in the next 5 years. He does not know if that will exist in the next 5 years. And you look at our industry and say, oh, well, that won't affect us. Like, it already is. We're already seeing, I know internally for my clientele, I'm seeing them balk on programmed remotes. Because if all they have is a smart TV or an Apple TV or a Roku or whatever, one device, that's really all they need. They can connect a Sonos amp or some other amp and get CEC to actually mostly function and be perfectly happy and not spend that $1,000 on that programmable remote. Without being forced at times to look at that 30,000 foot, that 50,000, that 100,000 foot view of the landscape of our industry, the external forces that are coming after it, it's really hard to then come back to your business and put your head in the sand. And again, just, we need to order more speakers this day.
Sure.
The concern I have with our industry, with the Avixa industry, with all of it, is that we're one innovation away from half of what we do not really being around if we're not paying attention. And, I used to have these conversations in the Avixa channel, which potentially some of the listeners will somewhat follow and understand. You walk around that show floor. You walk around Infocom. I believe you've been there a couple times, Ron. It's a lot of big businesses. It's a lot of, huge global organizations who, the second that somebody like Cisco or Amazon or any one of the big, 4 or 5 companies decides that they want to get into the meeting space game and not just dip a toe in, but they actually want to get in, then those companies are going to have to shift in a second, because Cisco can come in and drop more money than most of those companies ever will be worth to say, hey, we're going to do this. And our industry is not really any different. How long did it take for Alexa to permeate our channel?
Or Sonos.
Or Sonos or Google Home. And, you can nitpick on Sonos a lot. And I've got a lot of good friends there. But they've single-handedly made the sale of multi-room audio simpler. You don't have to explain to any client anywhere the concept of having music everywhere. You can pretty much say, yeah, so it's like Sonos. You'll get it everywhere, only we'll give you more control of it, or whatever that tagline if you're not selling Sonos. We sell a lot of Sonos, which is fun. But they've changed that conversation dramatically. You look at if Apple decides that all of a sudden they're going to actually invest in an Apple TV and not just content, that game changes overnight. The fact that I'm going to forget which product it is. One of the new embedded software platforms on, I think it's Roku, on directly embedded into the Sony TVs. That eliminates.
Well, I have I personally just purchased a Samsung Frame TV.
Yeah.
And it has a native Apple TV. So when we were flipping through that and we just simply logged in, and this all happened in the last few days, it was very cool that all of our Apple history, all of our videos, everything I'd purchased for the last 10 years
was all
instantly, even though my house does not yet have ATT internet or cable service. My son has been entertained for the last week with NetSertive and Apple TV.
Yeah. It's
fascinating.
The landscape is changing incredibly fast. And, there's so much going on. And what hurts me is, when I have conversations with integrators and they tell me how so many of these outside influences are not important. And they live in this little bubble. And I'm not saying that the bubble is going to burst or that all of a sudden, Google is going to take over everybody's jobs. All I'm saying is we have to actually pay attention to this, because it's only a matter of time before things continue to evolve. And as long as we continue to fight to, push our channel forward and why we bring value to the client, it's not that hard. There will always be a need as long as we continue to make ourselves fill that void. It's sitting back and not paying attention to what's going on and saying, no, we can continue to live our life just selling dedicated home theater rooms or just selling, a single line of remotes or whatever that niche market is for you. It's realizing that evolution, it does happen. It does happen. It does change. That's why my company's got 3 or now 4 main verticals, is because as stuff shifts, we've shifted, we've pivoted, we've changed things based on that. And it served us fairly well.
Matt, where can our audience follow you, and where can they learn more about your show, Resi Week? So I'm going to put that on a screen crawler here. But what can I?
So you can find me. One of the easiest ways is on Twitter at Matt D. Scott, on Facebook at Matt D. Scott. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I believe it's Matthew D. Scott on LinkedIn. There is. I'm
is it at Matt Scott or at Matthew Scott?
On Twitter, it's at Matt D. Scott. for Resi Week, you can find that at aviation.tv, where you'll find that show as well as a wide variety.
No, let's
as I get into the pitch.
Aviation.tv.
Yep, you'll find my show as well as all of our other shows, and obviously you can find me at CBA at least for the next 3 months, and hopefully for 2 more years after that.
Vote for Matt. That's the closing. That's the closing ask. Well, awesome. Well, Matt, it has been a pleasure to have you on at Automation Unplugged, and soon to be in people's ears via our podcast, which will be, the show should be available for download in the next few days. So it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Matt.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a dream. I've loved it.
A dream. Well, hopefully it's been a good dream.
A fantastic dream. It's been a goal.
A fantastic dream.
It's been a goal of mine to be on your show for a long time. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. All right, ladies and gents, we're going to wrap up here, but there you have it. That was episode 89, Automation Unplugged. Today was Wednesday, October 9th. I say was, it still is, unless you're listening to the recording. And tune in next time, and stay tuned for the channel. We're going to keep trying to get these promoted in advance, as you've now been seeing on our Facebook, so that you see the guest and the show date and the time. That's a new technique we've been practicing here for the last month or so, and that's actually worked out pretty well. We've been getting some positive feedback. So thanks again. I am going to put up some artwork here. Please don't forget to go over to Instagram and follow One Firefly. We're getting pretty close to 1,000 followers. So we're seeing that subscriptions there grow nicely. Hopefully you enjoy and appreciate our content that we're putting up there. And on that note, I'm going to sign off, and thanks so much. See you next time.